So we'll start with follow-up from the public meeting, and then we'll do the parent engagement follow-up, and or whenever staff come in, we'll just keep checking to see who's here whenever. So for the public meeting, of course, because of the topic at hand, of course, STAR was a big one, which we voted, we moved the resolution. A couple of things that were not related to the STAR ratings were the chess information. I know, Emily, I think you said you would follow up with that. Blah, 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 blah. COVID response and different responses across schools, which I know at one point we were trying to figure out because everything was evolving so quickly related to certain processes were coming online related to COVID, where the board wanted to insert ourselves or just kind of do a general, like we're being responsive. And I think that was it there. So basically it's chess and, if anyone remembers anything else, but chess and COVID recovery or COVID response.
What about the budget? Is that something that we should outreach about to our constituents about the budget once DC comes up with their budget? And
can we talk about the testing first? And then I do think budget is important. But just
I think kind of for this purpose right now at the moment, we're just talking about what we heard from at the constituent testimony.
Yeah.
I mean,
so this is related to the testimony from several parents about either having a virtual option or doing testing in there, more testing. I just am curious. I'm hearing a lot from my schools about the testing issue, less about virtual option, and I don't want to discount that. So I'm curious to hear if other folks are hearing about that as well. But in my ward, I'm hearing a lot directly to me, and then also just kind of like monitoring the social media stuff about either DCPS like canceling their weekly regular testing they're supposed to do, the 20%, or not testing, or like some schools are like asking for volunteers to go to the library and pick up PCR tests for them so they have enough. I don't know what that's about, if they're like doing more. But anyway, just my thought and what I wanted to put out and hear your thoughts on is, I want to propose to the chancellor or the DME, maybe more appropriately, to hold some town halls to respond to constituents' questions about these things. I just think that, and to clarify what their plan is to meet that 20% that they're supposed to be meeting. And they could do like clusters again, the way they did, like 136 or however they want to do it, 143. So they could do like 3. But anyway, that's just something I wanted to suggest, but only if you were hearing similar things.
I know Representative Thompson was jumping in.
Well, I was going to say 2 things. One, my first comment was going to be, I know that, I guess we structured this as like what we're responding to based on public testimony. And it is less things because of the focus of our last meeting. I think some of the things I'm about to bring up are not things that fell into the public meeting, and I'm going to hope that that's okay, because they're in line with. Some of them are in line with.
I just want to make sure we cover the things from public meeting. I mean, I get, yes, I don't think we don't have to stop on like public meeting stuff. I just want to make sure we cover like what people showed up and said. So are we good on?
I think we're good, because like the chess, we know what the follow-up is. And then I'm sorry, it's been a long week. But like, I think we know what the follow-up is for those things. And so in line with what Representative Soya is saying, I've not heard anything about this test pickup, like people having to go do that. I think that's a hot mess. That sounds terrible. I don't know how that would have happened. I mean, I know schools are strapped for capacity already with if everything that was provided was perfect, they would still be strapped for capacity right now. What I have heard more so and gotten a lot of calls about it's just a lot of confusion about the notifications for if a child is close contact, who makes those notifications, what is it? And I know that now the legislation has passed, but one of my, that was the thing I kept answering. And then by extension, of course, people who were concerned would then say to me, well, does this mean they're going to close schools? And my answer to them would be, I don't know, because we don't have like a clear metric for when that happens. Now, what I heard Superintendent Grant say was they do have a metric for when that happens. And I know Representative Gasol, you and I have talked about this, and I think one of the things that we should be pushing for is just that to be more public and transparent. I do think it's a good idea to create a space where people can ask questions. I absolutely think probably the DME, and like, of course, I would hope that the chancellor is present, but like the DME is probably the more appropriate office, because I've gotten questions from people who are DCPS parents and who are charter parents, and the chancellor can't answer for charters. And they all have, you know, all the different things. So I think part of the conversation that I'm hoping to have is just like, okay, I do believe that they have some type of formula. I totally believe that. And I think that we should let people know what it is. And that will go a long way to helping people understand what's happening and what to expect and to be able to plan accordingly. So I'm for like fleshing out the idea of how we can push for conversations that are helpful. I'm also for pushing for when there is information that is available and has been stated as available, figuring out how to make that transparent and available to the public.
So DME possibly is the avenue for that. I'll just jump in with the piece about the notifications. The thing that I'm hearing is it's just that inconsistency from parents, and it's getting to the point that they're like, I'll just keep my child home because I know I can at least be more consistent with that. So that's where people are saying they would rather the virtual option. I wouldn't say completely safety is off the table now. I think it's still there for some folks, but when I'm hearing more, it's actually probably two things. Virtual option because of it's more consistent for family needs, and then virtual option because of the big social emotional bullying situations. A lot of times parents will respond like they rather keep their children at home. So I just wanted to kind of interject my thoughts since it was on topic. Representative O'Leary, I see you. Right here.
Should we think about a resolution about these three topics as far as transparency and information? Because all of y'all are saying basically this, you know, people are in the dark as far as what's going on. The mayor has a meeting and tells us what the latest policies are. And the people in the schools don't even know about that until the mayor makes her meeting.
Can I respond to that? This is something that actually Ebony and Rose and I spoke about at some length the other day, which is maybe a resolution, but not before we communicate directly. I think that we need to start communicating directly much more often and really thinking about doing it as the default. And if it doesn't make sense for whatever reason, then we can move to that other step. But this is why I was suggesting a town hall of some kind, but maybe that's even getting ahead of ourselves. Maybe it's more reaching out with this information. We have been hearing X, Y, and Z from our constituents. We have come to the conclusion that there needs to be better messaging around what you are doing and better messaging about why the things that aren't working right now, like why there aren't, this is the other thing I'm hearing about, you know, the staff that were promised. I don't think that they're not trying. I think they are really trying, but I think they're not messaging around what is the holdup. And if they were better about messaging with that, I think they'd get a little more empathy and like maybe even some help.
Right.
You know, And so I think our first step should be to communicate,
Well-
just communicate that and then ask them, so what do you think would be the best way to improve that situation, right? Like put it on them. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and
Okay,
the them
I-
being, sorry, so the them being, this for me is a question that goes directly to OSSI first. Because like they're the ones who are saying we have public metrics around a lot of these things. I think the question about the hiring and all those things that probably lives somewhere between the chancellor and the DME, that does not take something like a resolution off the table, but it also allows us to do work to get information in between public meetings. Because what I have largely seen is that the board will issue a resolution, the board will issue a letter, people will feel good about it and they'll feel like we're fighting for them, but that does not mean we get the information they need. And I don't want, I'll just say as a, like, my perspective is like, sometimes the way humans work is like, if you come to me and you say, hey, here's what it is, and like, here's why we need it. And I do think they should see us as a partner, because people do call us, people do show up at our meetings and raise certain things. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're hearing those things directly. And so I think for me, our first step, and I guess we have a Jessica Jock, and Jessica John Paul, and I don't know who else ends up in the admin at this point, but we have a meeting after this. That's one of the things we can raise as we're scheduling our meetings with OSSI. Like, that's something to take directly to the superintendent. This came up in our advocacy outreach committee. As the leadership, we're concerned about it. We know you're working to do X, Y, and Z. We've heard you and others at our public meetings say this information exists. Like, help us help each other by just being on the same page. So that's my 2 cents, and that's my commitment to like take that back. Like I think that's important, and I think that's our role.
Cool.
And if we don't get an answer, then we can default to some of the other stuff. But it allows us to do all the things and have all the tools.
Cool. Great. Appreciate it for taking it back. I think there is merit in, sometimes I now that reflecting on what y'all are saying, like I think we go to the acting piece, because it's just, we're inclined to do that, trying to, build solutions for our, build solutions for our constituents. But
For good reason.
How many times have we actually just said like, hey, OSSI, like this is from, direct engagement, or when was the last time have we said like, hey, OSSI, this is from direct engagement? Fraser, I saw you were.
I agree with y'all completely about that. I mean, resolution is sort of heavy-handed, and maybe a letter is something else, but even a memo, just a friendly memo to, we'd like to get this kind of information from you and work together. I agree completely. I think that's the only way it's going to get done. So maybe but there has to be some kind of a transfer of information if the superintendent has that information, because we know that the communication from the leaders is really horrible to the people. They think that if they do a press conference, that everybody's going to know about it. I mean, the majority of the people of my parents in Ward 4, they've never seen the mayor's press conference, and that's not how you get information to people. So I think we should, whatever it would take, a friendly reminder to try to get us together so that we can get that information out.
Yeah. And just to make sure, so how we collect information to take directly or to send directly to ed leaders. I have matrix, social emotional testing. Should we like do a quick, hey members, like throw this in a document and let our board leadership or the admin committee or however, take those items to, or what are your suggestions in regards to like, how do we collect everyone's thoughts? Because I don't want to feel that we're missing.
I have two thoughts. One is, I feel like we've been really good at having summaries of information like from our public meetings. And so like that's why this is an issue in the first place. We've also been utilizing that tool that form where people have submitted things, and I'm pretty sure there are some things in there. So like if we can pull a couple of those things, I think that'll be helpful. And if we can ask the members, hey, like, can you also tell us what you've been hearing? Is this the right thing to do? And like a couple of those things together, we like to Fraser's point about it could be a memo, like it's a memo that we also just ask directly. Hopefully, and then of course, like bring up in the meeting we have with Aussie, and maybe that's a step. I feel confident that is a step towards getting a response. It also leaves us with the option of, if we don't get a satisfactory response, then having other tools to fall back on.
Cool beans. So it sounds like we'll be pulling together the summary, or not we, but staff members will be pulling together the summary, outreach forms, and then we'll kind of just say, hey, members, here's what was highlighted, anything missing, because the admin team is about to go and directly make these requests known. And Fraser, I see you.
Yes, is that okay? Is my raising my hand like that okay?
Yeah, it works. It's a little faster than that little button at the bottom.
I also have two questions about process. We know that the Aussie is going to talk to us on in our business meeting that's coming up about the things that Superintendent Grant talked about the other day, that amendment that they're sending. Could we also ask before that meeting that we set aside a little time with the superintendent or the representative about how we can facilitate what we've been talking about? And the other thing is, and in our public meetings, the superintendent, since I've been on the board, has always given a statement, and then that's it. Is there any kind of a format? Emily, I think you'd know more than.
John Paul is raising his hand.
Oh, good. Oh, hey, John Paul.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello. Related to that, so the superintendent attends as a.
Oh, sorry. I allowed John Paul to talk, but I realized I should have promoted him as a panelist. My bad. John Paul.
Yes, sorry, I'm here.
It's my fault.
What I was saying is the state superintendent attends our meetings as a guest, and so not as a member of the board. And so it wouldn't be like if we were in the old council chambers, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to address questions directly to someone else on the dais. And so we don't do that during virtual meetings either, because she's not a member of the board. And so we don't address folks that are not panelists or witnesses during public meetings.
Is that the same protocol for the business meeting?
In business meeting, it would be in the working sessions, we would be able to have a conversation. It is much more informal, but the superintendent doesn't often attend our working sessions. It is more times for her staff to brief on particular issues. And I think, we might be able to have those types of conversations. I would note as well, though, that I don't know that we would necessarily want that to happen in the public space like that. Questioning, we don't have oversight, and that's not our function. And so questioning an agency director in that type of way is not really an appropriate thing for the state board to do in our meetings.
Okay, I mean, we've had the mayor and the deputy mayor and the chancellor have come to the business meetings. And
yes, we have.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, in the spirit of the direct ask, I mean, could we just directly ask Superintendent Grant? I mean, she's a new superintendent, seems like trying to provide a different vibe. If she would feel comfortable, I just happened to put a question in the chat a couple of public meetings ago, just because I wasn't expecting her to even answer, and she was just like, oh, she felt comfortable. So I just want to know, like, if maybe we should ask her before taking that off the table, just to see or maybe she can give us solutions for how we could, or guidelines, something about how we could just ask her. I don't want to assume that she is not open to that.
Sure. I think that's fine. I mean, we can certainly ask if there's new things. I would also note, however, that the chat is a problem, and we're going to have to solve that at the leadership meeting in a couple minutes here. But we cannot use the chat for those types of conversations.
That's fine, but my point was about
Yeah.
question. I just happened to put it there because I know her team monitors.
Yep.
So I was asking a question, just like not to put her out there, but I was just like, hey, I know Justin, I know she's looking. I thought they were going to take it back and respond later. And she was like, oh, she was willing to respond. So I was just curious if maybe we can just, in the spirit of direct ask, Vice President Thompson, ask maybe Superintendent Grant, like, how does she feel about engaging with the board, or if it's just, bringing some of these direct questions through the admin committee, because I also remember her saying that during her hearing, where she relies also heavily on our admin team to
I know Emily's hand is up, and I see Fraser trying to jump in. Maybe this is because I know we said this meeting is going to be an hour. Maybe one of the things we can do at our retreat is to talk about like how some of the ways we can do a better job of bringing all the members in to engaging, and like what that was, so as that way we can take a full package of things in conversation with Superintendent Grant, because I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think that should be taken back, and I have a feeling that other members probably have opinions that are valuable as well. So maybe that's a conversation for the full board and not just advocacy and outreach, because it's important. It's
Cool,
important.
Just one last
I have my
comment.
hand up. I
That's
just want to
good.
jump
Go
in.
away,
I'm
Frank.
sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I don't like being jumped in the line. I have my hand up. Sorry.
I'm sorry, that's my fault. I just addressed because she said
speaking
my
to-
name.
I know, and I'm like, don't make me third. Sorry. So, no, I just want to suggest that, I hear what you're saying, John Paul. I think we could maybe at least quarterly or something invite her the way we invite the chancellor or the DME, because that is a separate thing. What she does is sort of a report from the superintendent. And I do think we should keep that as it is, because that's what it is. It's like the report from the executive director, the report from the president, the report
Right.
from the superintendent. But I do think there's value in being able to publicly engage her. And I don't think we need to do it every month. So how about if we do it, like 4 times out of the year? So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Representative O'Leary.
Yes, and I want to publicly say that what my ask is for this is for her to help us know. Period. That's it. Just to what she knows, we'd like to know what she knows about the metrics, as you said, as about the communication, which isn't good, how we can help her communicate, her and the other leaders, get the information out to our constituents. That's it. A very positive, proactive kind of an ask.
Thank you. I see Franco is here, and Representative Thompson did remind us that my goal was it was an hour, and then staff members reminded me, or not really reminded me, but graciously were like they had really good things for us to add to our agenda. So what I thought was going to be a little more lean, it's actually a little more information, but I think in a good way. So I know the chat is a problem, but until we can figure out why, if you have anything else in the chat that you want to put in regards to things we should be considering, while Franco, in regards to engagement with OSSI, or also in response to our public meeting information, because I do want to get Franco, and then I think I can't remember, somebody else is going to do something for our phone calls, or maybe it's Franco for both. So welcome, Franco.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Dr. Reed, and good morning, everybody. I'm glad I could join you today. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple things into the chat first. So the first thing is—
Do you need to share? I'm sorry. Do you want me to give you that?
Yeah, that would be great if I could.
I guess you're a panelist. All panelists. Let's see. I think I hit all the right buttons. Are you good to do it now?
Let me go ahead and try it now. Sorry for the sound effects.
It's okay.
Yep, it's working. Okay,
right.
Perfect. So before I go ahead and share my screen, I'm just gonna first drop the memo on the, why is it not working? Okay, I guess I'll just try and do that later. I'll just send you an email. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen now. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
All right, so as you might know, I will be talking about the feedback we got from the fall engagement sessions. So that would be the fall engagement session at Deanwood in November, and then the fall engagement session at the Martin Luther King Jr. Library in December. So just some really high level quick takeaways. There were 42 total attendees, likely around 50 counting walk-ins. And out of those 13 survey respondents, so the survey was sent out twice, but to each by email by Alex. So we had 13 respondents. Good news is that both fall engagement sessions were rated pretty well on average between the two of them. We averaged 3.3 out of 4 for the rating system. And then as far as the positives go, a lot of the respondents really appreciated the opportunity for interaction. So the more free-flowing parts of it. So being able to see, other community members are also being able to talk with the board members. So that's great. The one constant feedback we did get that they like to see improved was that a lot of respondents felt there wasn't enough time for each of the sessions, and also not enough time for them to really interact. There was a lot of presentation, but not much conversation. And then finally, I just wanted to put up some other topics that respondents also wanted to hear from the state board about. So those include high school graduation requirements, COVID and school reopening, technology equity, social emotional wellness, teacher retention, and DEI efforts in schools. So that can be something to ponder as we think about future topics at these kinds of engagement sessions. So then just looking at the, So looking at the ratings, I think there's a couple interesting trends going on if we look at it. So again, as I mentioned before, we had a 4-point scale that the respondents rated us on. So if we look at Deanwood was actually our highest rated one. It was rated 3.4 out of 4. And as you can see, all the different topic sessions were rated very well at Deanwood. And then at Martin Luther King, it was rated slightly lower at 3.2 out of 4. And you can see that actually all of the individual sessions were rated lower at the Mlk Library session, which is, I was at both sessions, not to editorialize, but I think that's an interesting conclusion. But we can definitely talk about that later. But then again, if we look at both sessions, it was still rated well overall. And even though the ratings for the sessions dipped a little bit at Mlk Library, overall the ratings were very good. So you can even see that education governance was our highest rated overall with 3.5 out of 4. So, and again, and nothing was rated below a 3 overall. So that's good to see. So just really quickly, I don't expect anybody to be able to read this because I can't, even with my young eyesight. So this is just the raw responses we got, and we can go back and look at this if anybody's curious. So this is for Deanwood. As you can see, again, the 4 is the green, good stuff. And then we have a 1, which is a bit, and we actually did get 2 1s, and that's something we can talk about. But I'll just, again, if we can revisit it if any of you think that's necessary. And then moving on, this is also Mlk Library. Again, you see a lot less 4s though, a lot more 3s here, and then there's still the 1. So again, we can loop back during the conversation period if anybody is interested in seeing more about this. But I just wanted to actually open up the floor, just some questions I had, and also some stuff we could just kind of get a conversation on this going. So the biggest thing on my mind seeing this was, how can we really encourage more attendees to respond to the feedback survey? We only got about 30%, and I think we had 8 respond for Deanwood and 5 for the Mlk Library. So that's a really small sample size. So, even though I think we should be optimistic about the feedback, it's hard to read into that feedback when it is such a small sample size. As I mentioned earlier, Alex did send out the survey twice through email after each event. So, that's a very strong effort to get people to respond, but I'm trying to think of other ways, and we can all brainstorm that together, other ways to get more people to respond. And then also, how can we incorporate feedback from from engagement session into future ones? So one piece of feedback we did get from Deanwood that came up again at Mlk Library was there wasn't really enough time for the sessions and not enough interactive time. So how can we make space for that time? And again, that also leads into my the third and final point. How can we make the sessions more interactive? Because that does seem like what the attendees really enjoyed the most. So that and any other questions, and I'll turn the floor back over to you. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Excellent summary, Franco, and lots of key themes, as well as things that you mentioned that point out question marks. So members, and I'd rather it be more fluid, but I don't want to like overlook anybody. So it's going to be a little raise hand elementary. Frazier, I see you were doing your hand. You're on mute.
I think that one way you can make the session itself more is to make it more proactive for the attendees. So that they, from what you said, is that they wanted to have more input rather than be talked to. So, and so that's the first thing. The other thing is that we're dealing with a pandemic, and to get any people to come out to go to an enclosed space is a plus. And we have no idea when that's going to change. So that we could, it might be worthwhile to have a Zoom meeting and see what happens.
Yeah, Frazier, I appreciate that because I know one of the parents that I frequently engage with mentioned having a virtual option and folks still not being ready to come fully in person. So that's a good point. I just want to quickly jump in and say, even the structure was a little, I appreciate the staff, I appreciate us for pulling it off related to having engagement around some of the key topics that we were really in the weeds of working on and trying to get feedback for. But I would notice like the two engagements were kind of structured differently. So I think Deanwood, was a little more intimate in regards to numbers, but even just small things that we did, like, did an introduction, set the tone where everyone was kind of together before doing the breakouts. People had time to sit together and talk, as they were getting their meal, and then they split up. And then I think even there was a bit of a culminating kind of a quick, like, okay, bye everyone. I think it helps set the tone a bit. And I would just also throw out, making sure people try to do the survey, get the survey as before they leave, or do it each session, or, at the end of each session, carve out time for that. Because I really enjoyed kind of just the quick scan I could see with my old eyes, Franco. I know you're playing. Yeah, like it was cool. Like that, the people who stopped to do our survey really did give some pretty like in-depth feedback, because my eyes immediately went to like our school accountability and that big red box. So I liked how that's set up. But I am interested to see like how were maybe numbers, because I know MLK, we had so many people. So, that could fluctuate numbers in regards to responses. Whereas Deanwood, we had fewer folks in attendance. So those numbers could skew things a little bit too. Either way, things could go. So, but this is helpful, that feedback.
If I could just jump in for 1 second. Dr. Reed, I actually was thinking the same thing as you, was having people fill out the survey at the end of the session. So one way I was thinking about doing that was just having maybe a paper handout with maybe like a scannable code or a URL that people would be able to enter and then be able to fill it out online right then and there. Because I do think after the moment, people, with email it can be hit or miss, because some people might not check their email super frequently. It might get lost in different kind of inboxes. So I think definitely looking into having people fill it out right after, or even carving out time at the end just to fill it out, would be something definitely worthwhile.
And I see somebody noted having the ability to attend all 3 sessions at the top. That was one that I even wished I had time, because I still think I never got to Representative Thompson's, even going to both engagements, presentation on governance, because of like having to be there and present. John Paul, I see your hand is up.
Sorry. I just wanted to note specifically on the timing. I agree. I think having the ability to rotate to all 3 sessions would be awesome. The challenge there right then is that the time commitment is more than 4.5 hours. And that's a long time to ask for the public to come to a meeting.
That's good feedback. I guess maybe figure out a way to give them that option. And even that would be like possibly what Representative O'Leary is saying. If we do a virtual, extending that invite even to people who attend in person to maybe pick up that 3rd session, since I think all of the topics are still kind of in rotation a bit. Or we could sub in parent engagement work that we're trying to do for maybe the school accountability, since we at least got to a resolution. Representative Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative Thompson, then Representative Zoe.
So we talked about at least our governance results within our committee. I totally agree that, like, if we can, and I think Representative Wilson brought this up in our governance meeting too, like if we could get people's feedback before they leave, they would be more likely to fill it out. That also assumes some preparation on our part, which I think what she pointed out accurately, like having that ready to go for the feedback. I would like to flag that, as I understand it, the school accountability sessions weren't necessarily identical. I remember talking to Representative Wattenberg, and she was saying that at one session she wanted to kind of get engagement, and at another session she wanted to present kind of a preview what some of the recommendations from the committee could be. And so that's something just to keep in mind as we look at the difference in the scoring too. We can't, like, for most of the committees, yes, we can assume that it is the same score of the same workshop, but for this committee, that committee, it was not. I think the other thing that I want to flag is something I clearly was very invested in making these sessions happen. And I had a couple of constituents say to me that they kind of felt, they didn't leave feeling like, and I don't know if they filled out the email or not, but they felt like in some of the sessions, people had already made up their minds on the board and tried to put words in their mouth. And I was super uncomfortable hearing as a board member. And so I don't know, I do think one of the things I would want to ask about, and I don't know if we asked this question, but just like, if there are things that we can do to make people feel heard or listened, like, did you feel heard? Did you feel listened? Something, I don't know the right language and I'm not gonna come up with it right now. But I thought that was worth sharing because they were comfortable enough to say that to me. And I cannot take for granted that just because someone's comfortable enough to say it to me, that means they're comfortable enough to say it to that person or share it in our larger board. And I don't think that's ever our intent as members. And so I believe we would want to know that and hear that feedback.
I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but it was something I think related to what Representative or Vice President Thompson just said. Oh yeah, I mean, one of them is just to take into account when we're looking at feedback like this and, you know, seeing the one there, that when you have a small sample size, that's really going to skew the, you know, number result, right? Like, so just keeping that in mind, there's always going to be the one, right? So there's that. And then, and I'm not saying to discount that person's input, it's important. And we should, hopefully they'll give us some, you know, qualitative explanation for why they gave that. So we understand, but just keeping that in mind, that it's not the norm, it's an outlier. And just to the point about, you know, how we read this feedback, just again, to Vice President Thompson's point, the purpose may be different between the sessions and then from session to session, as the case may be. So with the accountability work that was like in progress and there were iterations. And so they're not comparable, right? So that was all. I just wanted to point that out as like expectations for reading this feedback.
Yeah, we also had a rotation in presenters for accountability, because I know Representative Patterson wasn't able to be there the Saturday one. So we had a sub in, and actually we subbed in, and then Representative Sutter also chimed in for the second session of that, because we did it twice and she was able to get to the second part of that one. So that even those dynamics of like, you know, I don't even know if it can be how consistent it can be. Even thinking though, like what Representative Thompson is saying or mentioned, would it be helpful to even if sessions where we can get other people to present and we be in more of a listening role in the room, just really being, you know, versus I know some of the work is because we, you know, put together some things. We've been working on getting expert panelists, pulling information together. But even for like future topics, not all of them, but I'm just saying the value in elevating DC experts, people we have access to who could do that to take away some of the things that board members are really committed, you know, to. Yep, Rep. O'Leary.
I'm not an advocate of outside people coming in and telling people things. I think it's very good, but especially if we had a session, and I mean, the topic we were talking about at the beginning of this meeting was testing COVID related things. I think that having an expert on those kinds of things would be very helpful. But I also think that these sessions are sponsored by us, and I apologize for not making either one. My friends picked bad times to die. I'm being a trifle facetious about it. But I think that we have the expertise on the board to facilitate the meetings, but I don't think we need to be the sages on the stage as far as a meeting goes. I would much rather hear from the community about a topic than to tell them about a topic.
Good point. Could just be what the topic is. Anything else from us? Franco, you want to leave us with any closing words, next steps, thoughts?
I just wanted to kind of get the conversation started, and I think definitely everything we discussed. And another thing, I think Representative Thompson mentioned this, but you know, thinking also creatively about questions we can add to the survey as well. I think the question about whether or not they felt heard, definitely expanding the space of, you know, feedback. I think that's a great idea. So, you know, I'm very humbled and honored to be a part of this conversation today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rep. Gasoy.
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, Franco, thank you so much. This was great. You did a great job. I want you to apply for a job on our staff, please. And then the other thing, I just adding to, you reminded me of something that we discussed in the governance meeting last week, which is I think we need to add more questions that are related to the actual topics, because what we came away with was a lot of feedback about the structure of the sessions themselves, which is really helpful for planning the next session. But we didn't come away with a lot of feedback on, you know, sort of what folks took away or wish they had learned more about, or all of those things that would have helped us be more informed about those topics or get their input on those actual issues, if that makes sense. So I think we need to be more conscientious about that.
Thank you. I'm going to shift us to, and maybe Franco is doing this one too, the information about engagement with calls, or who is from staff members, the calls we've been receiving to the board. Who has
So
doing that?
I think Darren will be the one handling this, so we'll gladly hand it off to him.
Awesome. Oh, I see State Board of Education has raised their hand. Do I need to provide you co-host and make a host? Uh-oh, I don't know what I did, but does that help? Yes, okay. You should be able to do it now. I think that's Malayo behind that one. Maybe it's there. Didn't work?
I think we need to promote that person to panelist in order for it to happen.
Oh, okay. I made them a host. 1 second.
Well, there's multiple people logged in onto that account, and so there's one in the attendee group that needs to be promoted, I believe.
Oh, okay. You might need to have to walk me. Oh, there we go. There's another state board person. Okay, hold on. Uh-oh. Okay, wait, it says chat. Okay, John Paul, I'm gonna need your help with this one.
Sure. If you can make me co-host, I think I can do it.
Awesome. What is going on? Okay, it gave me that option. Can somebody else do it?
Sure.
I don't have that ability no anymore.
Ebony Rose, can you click on my name and then make me co-host, and then we can. I think I can in the panelist list.
You think after 2 years on Zoom?
I had the ability to do it earlier in the meeting, and now it's disappeared.
Hold on. Fraser, stop laughing at us.
I'm not
Right.
laughing. I just
That's
think
all
it's
I'm gonna
funny.
ask.
You notice I didn't volunteer. 'Cause
Malayo or Caitlin, whoever's in the meeting itself, onto the DC State Board, I think you're the current host. So, there's Darren.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Would you
I
guys-
only see a change role to attendee. I don't see the ability to
I think Darren's on.
make you anything else.
Yeah.
Darren is raising his hand because he has no superpowers yet.
I don't have superpowers.
There he is.
We can hear
talk.
you.
Let me see. It doesn't seem like I can share my screen at the moment. Is
Yeah.
it?
Who is the staff person who is logged in as DC State Board of Ed? That's not Darren.
I think it's Malayo.
It's me. I'm a medium panelist. What else do I need to do?
If you can make me host or co-host, I think I can take care of it.
Okay.
Sometimes the Zoom isn't quite the definition of what's going on. It's more like pause.
Yeah, and I promoted Darren to panelist at the very least.
It's strange. I accepted, but it's not letting me. It's still not letting me share screen, unfortunately.
You're still an attendee.
This is strange. Let me.
I'm trying to promote you to panelist, but it won't go. Maybe we can't have too many panelists, can we?
John Paul's the host now, it says.
Well, I'm gonna let John Paul do his thing and step over.
I'm gonna log out and try to log back in.
Okay.
While we're waiting on that, I would like to talk about that little report that we're going to talk about. I
Sure.
thought it was really, really, really interesting. And
Yeah.
thanks for all that work, but it's really interesting.
Yeah. While we're waiting for that, I want to talk about a little bit about it too as well, because I think one of the things that is interesting, and I will freely admit that I fail on this regularly, is not all the calls are logged, because I know I don't log every call that I get when I'm on phone duty. And so even so, to have an average of 5 to 6 calls per day related to these things is a lot. And it means that there is a lot of interest in the work that we're doing, but also people that need help. And so we're glad to have those conversations with folks, because we do try to help. And we hear a lot, and Dr. Gasoy knows this too, but there are a lot of people who call us because no one else will answer the phone.
Yep.
And we answer the phone every time it comes, because someone needs help.
That's the fascinating thing about it, is that the vast majority of the calls have nothing to do with the State Board of Education. But like, we all got an email today from a parent. And I responded to that parent and gave her Dan Davis's number.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the call back from Dan Davis that he was working on it right away.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of being on the State Board of Education.
Yeah, absolutely. And we used to have, and I think we may have provided it to everyone at the beginning of last year, but maybe it's a good time for us to refresh and review the call sheet, where we have a list of all of the numbers and who to call and those types of things. And it may be something too that the Advocacy and Outreach Committee might want to take a look at, just to see if there's anything that they see that's missing or those types of things. So I'm going to shut up and hand it off to Darren, because I know we have 21 minutes left of the meeting.
Okay, I'm glad that worked. I just had to switch to my personal account. So all of you should have received an email yesterday from Alex. He, along with the fellows and myself looked at the call log for 2021 and just put together a bunch of bullets and analyzed the calls that came in. I'm going to share my screen and just go over what was emailed to you, but I can also share this in Assembly to the public. Let me just put this up. Can you all see this?
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to do a quick review of this, followed by some further information that was not in the email, and then take any questions that you might have. So in 2021, and when we say 2021, we mean January 5th, 2021 to January 10th, 2022. We had 1,071 phone calls. And to put that into perspective, last year, 2020, we had 751 calls. And in 2019, prior to the pandemic, there were about 250 calls, like around something like around 250s. And so there's just been a major increase in phone calls. And we note that when everyone was in person at the office, they would take phone calls from a physical phone in the office. The fellows and staff have work phones, and we use our cell phones to answer these calls. And so we answer them from 9 to 5:30 p.m. And so of the 192 business days, we've received about 5.6 calls per day. The biggest issues that come up are record requests. So we received 347 calls based on record requests. Callers would ask for transcripts for themselves, or it could be an organization calling on behalf of an individual to check on their records. And so that was the top one. School complaints was the next highest topic at 200 calls. And then the third topic is district-wide education systems and operations, just general questions. And this report goes into what that means and what those different subtopics would be. And then following those would be enrollment, finding a school, COVID-19 questions or issues, SBOE specific calls, and then further down, employment in a district school, students with disabilities, IEPs, 504s, post-secondary higher education, homeschooling, and other. And actually, while this is 161 calls under other, there are subtopics, for example, professional occupational licensing. A lot of calls coming in for things like cosmetology licenses, employment verification for previous employees, and so on. So I can go into a little bit of detail on that as well. Most of the outcomes of calls, and when we say outcomes of calls, what do we do with those calls when they come in? I'm sorry, Ebony Rose, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question about the categories. So can you scroll back up a little bit?
Sure.
I see a category that is school complaint, and then I see one that is COVID-19. So like when we were talking earlier in the meeting, we flagged things like people calling saying they were frustrated with notifications, right, about close contacts. How would a call like that be categorized? Would it be under like school complaint, or would it be under like COVID-19?
That is an excellent question, very apropos of today. I'm on phones today, and so I had an actual call about this.
Okay.
And so a parent called, was very concerned about her child and the increasing number of positive cases. Now, the complaint was that she reached out to the school with these concerns, and she has not received follow-up from that school. That would be a school complaint, and I had her go to, or I provided her the information for OMB and explained what OMB does. And so that was filed under school complaint. but I also note COVID-19. And so the 2022 report may reflect, while we have these school complaints, this number of school complaints dealt with COVID-19.
That's super helpful because I yeah,
absolutely. And so with COVID-19, just to dig a little bit deeper with your question, COVID-19, when I am on phones and I put anything under COVID-19, it would be for information on COVID-19, or is the school going to be open because of these outbreaks? So these general questions that the DC Health or OSSI, policy questions that are more general, would fall into COVID-19. And so going back down, when we say outcome of calls, again, we could transfer them, or when we say transfer, the cell phones don't, in person at the office, as I understand it, staff could physically transfer the caller to DCPS, the student advocate, and so on. With our cell phones, we're not able to do that, but we can provide them with the phone numbers to them. And typically when I answer phones, I'll just say, if you have trouble getting a hold of them, give us a call back, and we could make sure that you're being helped. But the top two were transferred to DCPS, sometimes for record requests, especially for schools that are no longer open. If someone's trying to get a transcript, student advocate fields a lot of questions from the calls that are coming in. So for example, calls about 504s or IEPs, we would transfer them to the student advocate. And so, or like other issues that come up, we would forward them over to the student advocate. So the top two are about 1/5 each of the outcomes of the calls, followed by transfer to OSSI, transferred to the Ombudsman, DCPS online record request portal, and the DC Public Charter School Board. For Ward of Residents, there were, I would say almost a third of the calls that came in were non-district residents. But what you see here, these calls are only for the calls that were recorded as a ward or non-ward. There were sometimes wards were not recorded. Perhaps the caller hung up early, or something happened where a ward was not recorded. I want to note that in 2022, the call log, the form that we fill out, staff fills out to get this data, we're requiring ward level. So we can't hit submit without clicking that ward level. And so we're going to do a better job of having ward specific issues. Colleen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what you were saying. So it's not that we're getting an influx of non-DC residents, it was just that their ward was not recorded possibly, or are we getting people who are calling from other places? I don't know, I'm curious about that.
Great question. Yes. So non-district resident could be, and they do take the bulk of them, especially when I'm taking calls. A lot of my calls are non-district residents asking about teaching in the district. It could be about someone who attended a DC school but no longer lives in the district. Everything from a parent who maybe they're co-parenting and one parent lives in the district and the other does not. These are ward of residents, and so it's not necessarily the school that's being reflected in this report. It would be the ward of residents. But that's a great question. Any other questions before I jump into the highlights of this?
All right, I put a question in the chat. Do you all find that people typically know their ward? And if they don't, are you all helping them identify through like their address or something?
So what I would do with, if they did not know their ward, I'd be happy to look it up. So I just ask if they could provide their address, just reminding them I don't share that information out, but it would be helpful to them, and they get excited because then I get to tell them which ward they're in and which representative they have. So that is a great question. I would say just anecdotally, half of the people that I speak with do not know their ward of residence. It would be interesting to add that as a data point. Did they know their ward or not? But that's for another day. Any other questions? So just diving into a few of the highlights and summaries. So again, record requests, 347 calls, this is the top issue. 80% were first-time requests for records. So diplomas, transcripts, GEDs, 20% reported making multiple attempts to request records that were unsuccessful. There were 7 schools that made up, there were 7 of the schools named in the 71 calls regarding multiple unsuccessful attempts, there were 7 where 3 or more callers reported having issues with retrieving records. And we note those are Randall Highland Elementary School, McKinley Technology, Garfield, Dunbar, Blue High School, and Anacostia High School. For school complaints, these calls were broken up into different subcategories. So teacher, staff, or policy complaints was the top one at 94 calls, followed by unspecified other. So it could be about just vaccine issue, like they're against vaccines or something that comes up, that would go under something that's other. Bullying or violent incidences, that was 32 of the calls, followed by safety and building maintenance at 9 calls, and credit recovery and retention issues. So I've had calls in the past where a parent said that, or I've received calls from students themselves who said that they're following everything, but they're not going to be able to graduate on time. Those would fall under a school complaint where they just were not getting what they needed. So I'm almost at time. You have this report. I wanted to just note one other thing. So aside from all of this, at the very bottom, I created just a handy little sheet of all the different issues and topics, along with the outcomes of calls. So you can get a general sense of what those calls look like. And I could zoom in a little bit. What's not in this report, but I'm going to work on trying to make publicly available. I could work with you all on making this publicly available, but one other thing I wanted to share is just something like a dynamic tool. So you could hover over it and just get more information about calls. And I will share that in a moment. So this is more, again, just another visualization tool, but this is something that perhaps we could embed in the website, but this is something where you can hover over and look at most of the calls where, if a school was if a caller had a specific school in mind, and we recorded it, most of the calls came were about Blue. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It could just be a record request, but this just lays out some visualizations along with call by month, topic and outcome, as you saw in the report. I have something for calls by day, and then just the issue topic by school, and so on and so forth. So I will work to make that available as well to the committee.
I saw Emily first and Fraser.
Thank you. Thanks for this, Darren. It's really interesting and helpful. Just wondering if it would be possible to get a breakdown of the kinds of complaints or calls. Sorry, they're not all complaints, but the kinds of calls by ward. So we can see if there are patterns that are happening across wards, and then what are sort of specific to certain wards.
Yes, I can provide that.
Thanks.
I have one question about the first page, Darren. At the footnotes, on the footnotes at the bottom, you mentioned a number about 2019, but it doesn't show up on mine.
Thank you. Yes, in reading that, I made a note to fix that. So I'll send out a revised version. So that was
What was the number?
The number was, just give me one moment, please. I'm just gonna pull up the actual number. It was 272 calls over 106 business days.
Okay, so
So
three times as many people called in 2020. And then in 2022, it was about three times as many too. Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that the state board has been virtual for the entire time of 2021, and maybe people are watching our meetings and doing because the numbers are dramatically different in 2021 as opposed to 2020. And it didn't really, the virus started in March of 2020, right? But we had a significant amount of the year where there wasn't a virus affecting anything, but the numbers really spiked in 2020, but they spiked even more in 2021. Is there any kind of a read on that? I would like to say that we've become more visible. We were much more visible as a board in 2021, and maybe that has something to do with, but I don't know.
that is a really good question, Fraser. But it was before my time, like when I started at State Board, I started virtually. So I'm curious to see how many were physically coming to the office. Maybe John Paul could speak to that, but I would venture to guess that with COVID, that might have increased the number of calls. I'd have to really look at maybe month by month to see if there was a jump. I know that there are transcript requests, things like that. I'm not sure if there were any other policy changes during that time to cause that increase. And that would be kind of like a deep dive into answering that question. But it is.
I know we don't have much time, but I'm just wondering about January of 2022, which is only halfway through, how the numbers look. And I don't do statistics, but I'm just interested in it, how the figures would look in January of 2021 for the first 15 days, because you should be getting calls all the time, and we're back, and everybody's back in school.
I could do an analysis and share that with you.
Good.
All.
Thank you. Maybe December too.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm jumping in with my hand up about it would be helpful, and thank you so much, Darren, for pulling this information, because I think people are getting access to us, and that's what, in regards to access to us, because it gives them access to solutions, not just about us. But it would be helpful, because I am curious about like that, going over the call sheet and just responses to when folks reach out, specifically around some sensitive topics. Well, actually, let me go back. It would be good to know, like for some of the cases, like what happened, or specifically around like the case that you referred to, like student advocate, because I'll frequently, because Serena is very responsive, like, we provide case management, but I've, in a variety of ways, sometimes parents will reach back out because maybe they have a new question, or they feel like their original question wasn't answered, or something will happen. It'll just kind of help prepare me to know what the response is. So I'm just wondering if there can be like a feedback loop. I also know there's a level of privacy, but if I'm referring them to the student advocate, it would just help kind of frame, like if they reach back out, I know, what was done before having to re-refer. And then I would say, in regards to, throughout the year, I had some interesting topics where actually like probably sensitive information, where one, I'm getting a sense of somebody maybe having like a mental health issue. how to respond. I've also received like from an ANC commissioner, I was like, hey, that's a mandated reporter situation that you shouldn't reach out to me. You might want to reach out to the, social, like the hotline for that. And time was ate up trying to reach out. So it might be good to have a refresher for members on those sensitive topics. Even like some people, Serena one time was, was like somebody was looking for a child and it was like, do we have the ability to even talk about that? So just preparing members for those cases that kind of can get sensitive for being a public official, but then also want to be responsive to people who are reaching out to us. And I'm gonna go Fraser then Emily, because I think Fraser might have a lag with the physical hand versus the virtual hand. So Representative O'Leary.
I just wanted to ask John Paul, because Carlene brought up mandated reporting. Are we mandated reporters? Okay, if ever I think that's something that we need to talk about at the retreat.
And or do the training possibly.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, my school hat clicked in for a few calls. So.
And Serena did respond. I sent it to when the parent talked today to all of us. I sent that to Dan and Serena, and both of them responded.
Okay, cool. Representative Gassoy.
Thank you. Two separate thoughts. One is I was going to ask this anyway, and then we did this review of our calls, but I'm wondering, can we do a regular review on the constituent feedback form as well? I would like to do that monthly, or at least however often we do it, because if I'm going to send it out to folks, I want to kind of know what we're doing with it. And I have used it, like I've uploaded feedback I've gotten just over email or on the phone, but then I'm not sure what happens with it. So maybe at our next meeting or offline, we could discuss what our plan is for using that platform. And then this other question is related to what you were just talking about, Representative Reed and Representative O'Leary. Sometimes I am worried about the adult that I hear from for various reasons, and I'm not sure how to follow up. I'm not sure if it's like appropriate to send that to our sister offices or not. So it's just something I'm raising. I'm not sure if I should, call you, John Paul, or what, but it's happened a few times where I'm like, that's worrisome. Yeah. So not necessarily like in a family services kind of way, more just like, I'm worried about that grown up, So just putting that out there if anyone has insights or thoughts.
Well, awesome. I think really one, to see the information, and two, I'm glad members kind of forwarded some of the things that we were thinking about related to, how do we respond to folks in a meaningful way, but then also making sure we're in, DC guidance around just a variety of topics. So thank y'all. We are going to just, I know Representative or Vice President Thompson has to jump off, as well as John Paul has to jump off. And Fraser does. Representative Gasol, I know we just have the parent thing, but I think we just have to like refresh our memories pre-holidays about where we stopped. And so I'm pretty sure, I think we're good to wrap. I'll just follow up with you about where we landed. So thank y'all for the time. And we'll do this again the third Friday of February. Thanks.
A fabulous meeting.
Everyone.
Thank you.
I think I got